Well, friends, hello. I hope you are well. Welcome to small group today. Thank you, as always, for connecting with the group this week. And thank you to everyone who showed up and was involved in Scattered Sunday last Sunday. If you missed it, you were missed, and you missed an absolute treat. From the feedback I've had so far and from the things that I've seen as I travelled around some of the activities, Scattered Sunday was a brilliant time together. I know only a couple of people went up to walk in the forest, but I heard even that was a great time. I passed through and saw lots of people gathered in church and sharing together, and I think playing charades when I walked through. And I know that Chingford Hall was an absolutely incredible time down on the estate there. And then it was great to gather with lots of folk over in the park for a picnic afterwards and share stories and catch up. So thank you for being part of Scattered Sunday. Thank you for trying something new. And we look forward to sharing more about it in the days ahead and hearing more stories and testimonies. But it was a great day. And so thank you to everyone for making it a great day. Enough about that for now. Will you cast your mind back, if you were alive at the time, to July 1969? To be precise, the 20th of July 1969. Some of you were alive then, others perhaps not. I wasn't born then, I won't be the only one. But even if you weren't born in July 1969, if I said the words Apollo 11, then even if you weren't alive, you will still be able to cast your mind back and picture the events of Apollo 11, the moon landing, July 1969. And my guess is, whether you remember it because you were alive and watched it on TV, or you weren't born then but you learnt about it in school and have read about it since, or you've seen the video of those two guys walking on the moon, if I said to you, name those two astronauts that walked on the moon, I bet you could do it right now. It was Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. But my guess is that less people would know that there weren't two astronauts involved in the Apollo 11 mission, there were three. And even if you were aware of that, my guess is even less of you would be able to name the third astronaut on the Apollo 11 mission. His name was Michael Collins. He was an experienced test pilot. He was a major general in the US Air Force. He was a seasoned astronaut. He was the first astronaut to do more than one spacewalk. And on the Apollo 11 mission, Michael Collins, along with the other two, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, travelled the 238,000 miles to the moon. But he didn't go quite as far as the other two. The closest Michael Collins got was 69 miles away from the moon. And while Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin made history and became household names walking on the moon, and we've all heard those infamous words, one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. We've all seen the video images of the moon landings and them walking on the moon and planting the flag. And as Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin spent nearly 24 hours on the moon walking and taking samples, Michael Collins stayed on the command module orbiting the moon completely by himself. I think he said he went around the moon about 30 times, and on each of those occasions spent 48 minutes on each orbit in what we call on the dark side of the moon, where he was completely cut off from all communication with his other astronauts, but also with mission control on planet Earth. While the other two made history and became household names, Michael Collins remained on the command module, so close and yet so far from the moon. He never touched the surface of the moon. And yet, in his autobiography, he wrote, "I know that I would be a liar or a fool if I said that I have the best of the three Apollo 11 seats. But I can say with truth and equanimity that I am perfectly satisfied with the one I have. He went on, "This venture has been structured for 3 men, and I consider my third to be just as necessary as either of the other 2. Isn't that amazing? Where are we going with that? Today in Romans chapter 12, and you may or may not have read Romans 12 in your groups together today. I know this is, I think, the 3rd week that we're spending in this small passage in Romans 12, so don't worry about reading it if you haven't already. But in Romans 12, we see 4 gifts. There's more than 4 gifts listed in Romans 12, but there's 4 gifts in Romans 12 that I would say are classed as the Michael Collins gifts, if you like. Gifts that are often unseen, actions that are often overlooked, gifts that, if you like, are not as celebrated or coveted or pedestaled as some of the other gifts, and yet they are absolutely vital. Those gifts in Romans 12 are serving in verse 7, giving in verse 8, still in verse 8, leadership or administration, depends on your translation, and still in verse 8, showing kindness or mercy, again, depending on your translation. Those are the Michael Collins gifts. Unseen, often, overlooked, not as celebrated, no one's as desperate to have them as they are some of the other gifts. And yet, if those are your gifts, if you don't do what you do, nobody else can do what they do. If those in the life of our church who are gifted to serve and to give and to lead and to show kindness, the things that often no one else thinks about, if you don't do what you do, the church doesn't function. Today I want to honour and celebrate and say thank you to those in our church with those gifts. And I want us to think today particularly about 2 of those gifts. 2 of them we'll come back to. Showing kindness kind of describes itself, doesn't it? It does what it says on the tin, but we will come back to it because there's some ideas that I'd love to share with you. And leadership or administration, depending on your translation, that will need a video in itself. I will come back to it. I'd like us today to think about those gifts of serving and of giving. If you are part of our church family right now and you have these gifts and you use these gifts in the life of our church, thank you. If you're part of our church family and you've identified that you have these gifts and you're not sure how you use them best, stick with us. There's plenty of ways that you can use them in the life of our church. Let's think serving and giving. Serving. Those with the gift of serving are those who will most often be there and just roll their sleeves up and do what needs to be done. You are someone who will show up, turn up, and be willing to do whatever needs to be done, not for recognition, not for celebration, not for rewards, but simply to see things get done and to see the church function well. You may be involved in setting out and clearing away chairs and tables. You might be involved in keeping our church clean and our gardens and grounds tidy and well looked after. You might serve on one of our teams. You might be involved in maintenance and just taking care of odd jobs that need doing around the church. When you see a need, you step up and you meet it. Maybe you're someone who right now is serving on a team that you never expected to be serving on. Maybe you didn't see it as your primary gift or some way that you'd desperately like to serve, but you saw a need and you stepped up to see that need was covered. There are so many people like that in our church right now, and I want to say thank you. And if you've identified that you have the gift of serving, and you're not sure where to use it, well, friends, there are so many opportunities. Speak to your small group leader, speak to me, and we'll gladly link you with an opportunity. Depending on your preferences, your availability, your skill set, you may like to be involved in cleaning, particularly in our church, keeping our church clean during the week so it's ready for Sunday. You may be willing to come and assist in keeping our garden, our grounds outside clean and tidy and well maintained. You might like to serve on our media team, our children's church team. You might be great at DIY and be ready to step up and just do some odd jobs around the church when they need doing. You might have experience and be available to give insight and coordinate some of the bigger projects, maintenance projects that are going on in our church. You might be available to come and open up and lock up for some of our hall bookings. There are plenty of opportunities to serve, maybe with serving refreshments. You name it, there's a role for you in serving, in rolling your sleeves up, turning up, and doing what needs to be done so that the church can function. We want to honour those who serve. We want to create opportunities for those with the gift of serving to serve. And giving. Again, just like we said last week, lots of the gifts that we see in Scripture are instructions for all believers, but a particular ministry for some, and giving is one of those. As we think about giving, we recognise that everything we have comes from God. We recognise that we are just stewards of all that we have. And we'll be held accountable for how we steward what we have. And giving is simply stewarding what you've been blessed with to be a blessing to others. And particularly, do you remember when we talk about spiritual gifts were given to build up the church? We think specifically about using what you have been blessed with to resource the ministry and the mission of the church. Now, right now we are in a season of growth, a season where as we rebuild post-COVID, we are looking to expand our reach, expand our mission. And there are so many exciting opportunities ahead of us that we've discussed already. Some of them you may have seen just last Sunday on Scattered Sunday, particularly on Chingford Hall Estate. You'll have seen some of the incredible opportunities that are right there waiting for us. But friends, none of this happens for free. It needs money. It needs resource. And even the day-to-day running of the church, keeping the church building open and running and the lights on and the heating on and the building upright and maintained, insurance, all of those kind of things. The cost of all of those things right now are going through the roof. You will know that all too well. And so we desperately need givers. And we are so grateful to everyone who's part of our church and who gives faithfully to the life of the church. And particularly there are those who have the particular ministry of giving, who enjoy and are able to give particularly generously towards the life of our church and the ministry and the mission of our church. Thank you to you. And I know that everyone right now is being squeezed. You're being squeezed in every direction. Your own expenses are going through the roof. If you work, salaries are not going up at the same rate as prices. And so there is a special grace. There is a special resolve. There is a special sacrifice. There is a special wisdom involved in sustained giving to the mission and ministry of the church. And we see that and we appreciate that. If you're part of our church family, I want to invite you to give as you are able. It's an instruction for all believers, but for those who have the particular ministry, the particular gift of generous giving, if you don't know how best to support the church through your giving, speak to Melvin or Ruth, our treasurers, and they'll gladly assist in any way that they can. Thank you for resourcing the church for mission and ministry. Right now, why don't we take some time in groups? Why don't you celebrate and honour those in your groups with those gifts? If there are those in your groups who have identified those gifts but aren't yet using them and aren't sure how, encourage them, pray with them, pray for them. And there's a couple of questions that look at practical ways that we see these gifts used in Scripture. Look at those together. And then take some time to pray for each other as always, and have a great time together.